Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. So, today I thought I would contemplate loss. Here lately, of course, as always, I've been doing a lot of self reflection, and I was thinking about, how everybody's path is unique and different. And I think a lot of people spend a lot of time focused on what other people are doing or trying to do things like them or, just comparing themselves to others, right? And it's really wasted time because if you focus inward, you're more likely to find that specific path for yourself. What brought me to this topic was, I've been feeling kind of bummed. Most recently, it was my mom's birthday, who's passed. Those of you who know me know already. And my parents' anniversary is coming up. And, I just started thinking about, how I possibly may come off to others, possibly being impulsive or quick acted at times. However, I guarantee everybody that knows me knows that when I make a decision, I go from the left to the right, black and white, and contemplate all of the gray before I make my decisions. Now, it does take me a long time to come to important decisions, but when I do, it's usually beneficial. I am, however, compulsive and impulsive at times. I think a lot of that does have to do with my trauma. Again, the trauma isn't my fault, but it is my responsibility to overcome that trauma and learn to grow from it and to adapt, right? It's either that or spend, the rest of my life living my life the way that I had in the past. So, with that being said, I know myself, sometimes I can allow my emotions to get into matters, and cause that whole stress response system in my brain to overreact and then cause me to act in ways, that I may be regretful of later on. I do feel like I've made a ton of progress working through this. However, there's still always work to go. I know with myself, I need to practice my bottoms up approach. So that means engaging with my emotions instead of disassociating and or ignoring them or running from them, right? That's definitely not easy to do, but well worth it. I'm really trying to move past the negative thinking and ways and analyzing so much my past. I do think it's important to reflect, not on past, but yesterday, this morning, this past week. And reflect. I definitely think that's important in self-growth. However, I definitely don't think it's beneficial for people to dwell on past, 6 months ago, a year ago, because it's never helpful for anyone. So with that being said, I know that sometimes, my goal, where others may be to be less impulsive, I want to be more impulsive in good ways. And in doing so, that means connecting with my emotions, whether that's good or bad, right? Taking a bottoms up approach allows me to, instead of disassociating from my emotions, try to connect with them and to learn and grow from them, right? So that means living in the moment, allowing myself to feel good, bad, or either way. It's all going to lead to a amazing path, because if I'm feeling those emotions and I'm coping with them and dealing with them effectively, that is a win in my book, right? So back to loss, right? So I know some people can sometimes view me as maybe a little bit impulsive. I definitely think when things matter, other people involved, I definitely try to take into account others' emotions and feelings and thoughts on a situation. However, one thing I've learned in my life is I've had a lot of loss, right? So the most important people in my life, my best friend Mike, was killed. My high school sweetheart was killed. My mom was died from cancer. My closest cousin and his brother both passed away. So definitely dealt with a lot of loss, which, I'm not trying to get sympathy because I know everybody's dealing with loss, different types in their own ways, right? However, sometimes it's situations I'm going to do what makes me happy, whether other people feel like it's impulsive or not, because number one, if I'm not hurting others and I'm doing what makes me happy, that's what's most important. And why I say this is all of the loss that I've witnessed in my life has shown me that time you cannot get back, right? You can get everything else back, but you can't get time, right? So we need to really cherish that with loved ones. My parents both came from very, very, very poor families and grew up in poverty, met each other. Neither of them had an education. My mom came with 3 kids. My parents were living on welfare. They offered my mom free nursing schooling. Of course, she took that up. My mom was super smart. My dad, did construction my entire life. He was a framer, but basically did any odd jobs he could do for money, right? And then he would gamble his money, play a pool on the weekends to double his salary, because my dad is a total pool shark, right? Anyway, so here we are. They meet, they work through. My mom gets her nursing degree. We moved from a small town in West Virginia up to Quarterfield Manor in Glen Burnie, Maryland. Those of you who are familiar, it's not, well, not that it's a bad place, but it's Section 8. And we have 5 kids in a 1-bedroom apartment, right? My mom worked as a nurse, and eventually my dad was able to open up his own company, Join Freeman. Him and a couple brothers and a couple other guys, they grew over 4 or 5 years. However, the large company that he was working for went bankrupt. Rather than my dad screwing all of his employees, he paid them and he did claim bankruptcy, obviously, because his company owed him over $100,000. They basically said, come get the office furniture, right? So here we are, my parents are trying to work their way up. We're still at the bottom class, right? Well, after a few years, my dad going back to work for others, my mom doing nursing, my dad attempted to open up his business again. Now, this is where character and integrity really plays into the picture. My father's workers from before, not family, a couple family, but mostly people that had worked for him, a lot of Spanish guys. A couple of them he actually did help get legal and are some of the most amazing men and U.S. citizens to this day. Anyway, when he went back to work and opened up his own company, he was not going to be able to pay for his employees for a while. So for about 6 weeks, there was about 20 guys that came and worked for my father and said, Tony, we trust you to pay you when you get that money. Well, take it up about 20 years. My dad had about 100 guys that worked for him. Small, heavy equipment business. He owned 2 cranes. So now rather than spending 10 G's a week on the crane, he was making that and saving that at least on each crane. He grew, basically me and my mom did the office work, mostly my mom, no kidding, because most of the time, I was living elsewhere. However, I did have that experience with growing a business from ground up, just payroll, billing, options on homes, the good thing with my dad, he was an amazing individual with a ton of character, and he was able to build, all the builders wanted him. So whether it was Ryan Homes, Lavelle, Regency, all the major builders in the area, in Maryland, DC, Virginia, he basically framed their houses. So after all of this time, my parents, they both growing up poor, they wanted to take trips. They wanted to have, my dad always had motorcycles, grew me up since age 8, I've been riding dirt bikes, right? So my dad always had dirt bikes, boats, jet skis. They had several condos in the Ocean City, as well as my dad built my mom $1 million home on the water down in St. Mary's County, Maryland. And the best thing about it was my dad still helped people. You talk to people that know my father and they'll say that he's helped them opening up businesses. He's just a really upstanding individual. And I feel very, very blessed that I was raised in a household where my parents were very hardworking and had a ton of integrity, because I definitely feel like that's ingrained in us from our parents, right? So let's now get back to the impulsiveness and the loss. This is where we go to my parents working their whole life and struggling and building and coming up. They could have held onto that money. They could have put it into the 401ks. They could have put it into the savings account, which I'm not knocking. I mean, in 95% of situations, that is the way to go, right? However, both of them being poor and a bit impulsive, and probably both of them coming from trauma, they decided to live it up and enjoy it. They went on all the cruises and vacations. My dad went out to the tundra, flew in by helicopter to go bear hunting, and they did it, and they lived life. My mom's goal was to travel the United States in an RV, right? So they bought a huge pop out both sides RV and went and traveled the United States for about a year. Fast forward another few years. My mom's diagnosed with cancer. She did do treatment, I think more so because she didn't want to. All of us kids basically bugged her too, and hindsight, I probably wouldn't have did that again, because I did move home and live with her and help with the treatment and care, and she basically slept and was so sick and miserable those last few years anyway. She probably would have been better off having that 6 months of good time, but she fought that battle for us, I definitely blame DuPont, you MFs, right? Poison everybody in Parkersburg. You know, my mom grew up in a shanty next to the railroad tracks, so I'm sure they got all that toxic water and C8. However, she didn't live long enough to get paid out like she should have from you all. All of her brothers and sisters, all 5 of them died of cancer, you know, from this, which is very common in the Mid-Ohio Valley. Anyway, so here we are. Mom died. What if my parents worked their whole life for all of this stuff and held on to it and didn't even get to live to enjoy it? Thank God they went and did everything they ever wanted to do. Now, a couple years after after my mother's death, let's talk about my father. So I moved out Pennsylvania. Once my mom passed away, I promised I would get my dad, you know, figured out how to pay his bills, get him on, you know, auto pay, teach him how to do different things like laundry and things like that. Got him on his feet, moved away. I'm living in Pennsylvania. It's about 2.5 years after my mom's death, and my father, I get a phone call stating that my father has fell off of a roof. At 60 years old, he was up there doing sheet metal roofs on top of a business, because once my mom got cancer and my dad had his own business, they basically, due to medical bills, they lost or sold everything they ever worked for, right? Except for that my dad still owned the, you know, 300-acre farm in West Virginia. So here my dad falls off the roof. They fly him into Morgantown shock trauma. He's there for a month. We don't even know if he's going to live. He basically broke about every bone in his body. He had a traumatic brain injury. Luckily, I feel like God prepares me, because about a year before this, I started getting really fascinated in neuroscience and brain science. Again, taking them courses on Coursera about neurology and neuroscience. And so when this happened to my father, I did kind of understand, not fully, I'm definitely no expert, but I understood what was happening to his brain. He slept for the first month. When he got out, he had a feeding tube in his stomach for over 2 years. He wasn't able to swallow, had to relearn everything, didn't know who we were, you know, all that good stuff. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the whole, you know, recovery with all of that. He still, you know, isn't the way he used to be. He's very, very, very different still to this day. And, you know, we have good days and good and bad days. However, once again, what if my dad saved all that money? What if they didn't go there? What if they didn't go on vacation to buy the nice things that made them feel good in the moment, right? So what? Whoever would get that, we would get that. I don't want that. I'd rather see my parents who worked their whole life be happy with that, right? So I'm going to circle back around why sometimes I think I could definitely prepare better for the future. I'm not irresponsible. All my bills always get paid. But I'm here to enjoy life and share with others, you know. I believe in uplifting and empowering others. If I ever hit the lottery, I would just travel the world doing humanitarian projects. I wouldn't just give them the money. I want to be there with them. I want to teach them to learn and read, or AIDS awareness, or dig a well, you know, out in Africa, or, you know, teach these girls in, you know, Costa Rica who may not be getting the education that they deserve and need. You know, I want to do that and spend that. And I believe that, to me, is true richness. Not hoarding money, not 401ks. I'm not saying any of that isn't good. But it is just me, you know. My legacy is what I'm going to give to the world, and that is my time and my love. So with that being said, God bless everybody. Make sure you're giving back too and paying it forward.